Revenge with Karen.
I knew the company was dead the moment Braden walked in wearing a fleece vest that cost more than my first Honda, smelling like aggressive sandalwood and daddy's money. He didn't walk like a CEO. He walked like a toddler who just found out he owns the sandbox. For 8 years, I had been the structural steel holding this consultancy together. I wasn't the face on the brochure. That was Old Man Miller, the founder. But I was the one in the trenches. I was the one flying coach to Omaha on a Tuesday night to convince a manufacturing giant that their digital transformation wouldn't bankrupt them. I was the one turning panic into strategy decks that looked like art and read like gospel. I took a struggling software consultancy that was bleeding cash and turned it into a tier 1 vendor with a client list that would make a frantic McKinsey partner weep into his silk pillowcase. My life was a spreadsheet of calculated victories. I don't smoke, I don't do drama, and I certainly don't do failure. My drug of choice is a triple shot espresso and the silence of a boardroom after I've just dropped a truth bomb that saves a client $10 million. I built this place, brick by bloody brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. I missed birthdays. I missed anniversaries. I missed the moment my knees started clicking when I stood up, all for the sake of Q3 projections. But then Miller retired. He looked me in the eye, shook my hand with that calloused grip of his, and said, "Renee, you're the engine. But Braden needs a playground." And just like that, the keys to the kingdom were handed to a 30-year-old whose resume was written in crayon and financed by a trust fund. By the way, if you're listening to this while hiding in the office bathroom to avoid your own incompetent boss, me a favor and hit subscribe and maybe like this. It helps the algorithm find other corporate soldiers dying inside. And honestly, the validation is the only bonus I'm getting this year. Thanks, team. Now back to the train wreck. The transition wasn't a handover. It was a hostile takeover by stupidity. The first week, Braden reorganized the seating chart based on vibes. He moved the engineering team next to the sales team because he wanted cross-pollination, which is corporate speak for I want the introverts to have panic attacks while the extroverts ring gongs. I sat in my corner office, glass walls, view of the Rockies, the only sanctuary I had left, and watched the infection spread. Braden didn't care about deliverables. He cared about optics. He cared about the font size on the slide decks more than the data inside them. Brought in an espresso machine that required an app to operate, and a chief vibe officer named Kyle who wore beanies indoors and spoke exclusively in LinkedIn motivational quotes. "Renee," Braden said to me during our first one-on-one, leaning back in his chair like he was posing for a Forbes cover that would never happen. "You're incredible, truly, a legacy asset, but we need to pivot. We need to be more agile, more disruptive." Disruptive, I repeated, my voice flat. "Braden, we manage enterprise software implementation for Fortune 500 logistics companies. They don't want disruption. They want their trucks to show up on time. If we disrupt them, the economy stops." He blinked, that blank, cow-eyed look of a man who has never had to pay a heating bill in his life. Right. But think about the narrative, Renee. You're very operational. I need you to be more visionary." Visionary. Word tasted like expired milk. I saw the writing on the wall, and it was written in Comic Sans. He didn't want a strategist, he wanted a cheerleader. He wanted someone to clap while he drove the bus off a cliff. The quarterly review was coming up, and for the first time in 8 years, I wasn't leading the prep. I was consulted. I went home that night, poured a glass of Sansera that cost $40 a bottle because I earned it, and stared at the lights of Denver. My husband, a man who has the patience of a saint and the emotional stability of a golden retriever, looked at me. "You look like you're planning a murder," he said gently. "Not a murder," I said, taking a sip that tasted like iron and rage. A controlled demolition. I didn't know it then, but I was already mentally packing my boxes. The disrespect wasn't loud yet. It was a low hum, like a fluorescent light about to blow. But the moment he called me a legacy asset, sealed his fate. He thought I was old furniture he could put in storage. He forgot that I was the one who bought the house. And the thing about legacy assets, we know where all the bodies are buried, because we're the ones who dug the graves. The rot set in fast. It wasn't a slow decline, it was a mudslide. Braden didn't just ignore the playbook, he burned it and tried to read the smoke signals. He started hiring his network. In the corporate world, network usually means professional contacts you've vetted over years of shared trenches. For Braden, his network was a collection of frat brothers and Instagram acquaintances who thought scaling meant making the logo bigger. Enter Tiffany. Tiffany was 24, had a degree in media studies from a university I'm pretty sure was an online scam, and she was Braden's new strategic liaison. I still don't know what a strategic liaison does, but apparently involves nodding enthusiastically at everything Braden says and using the word synergy as a punctuation mark. I walked into the Monday morning pipeline meeting, a ritual I had established to keep us honest on revenue, and found my seat occupied. Tiffany was sitting there, typing furiously on an iPad with a neon pink case. "Oh, hi Renee," she chirped, not moving. "Braden said we're doing a standing retro today, so grab a spot on the floor if you want." On the floor, I stood. I stood like a statue carved out of granite and pure hatred. Braden breezed in 5 minutes late, holding a green juice that looked like pond scum. "Guys, energy is low," he announced, clapping his hands. "Let's ideate. The Q3 numbers are, well, they're numbers. But numbers are just feelings with hats on, right?" I felt a blood vessel in my left eye twitch. "Braden," I said, my voice cutting through the room like a diamond cutter. "Q3 numbers are down 20% because we missed the renewal deadline for the OmniCorp account. The account I specifically warned you about 3 weeks ago." Braden waved a hand dismissively. "OmniCorp is old energy, Renee. They're stuck in 2015. We're chasing unicorns now. Tiffany, tell them about the TikTok strategy." I watched, horrified, as Tiffany presented a slide deck that was 90% emojis. "Proposed we market our enterprise-grade supply chain software, which costs $5 million a year, by doing challenges on social media. Imagine," she said, eyes wide, the CFO of logistics doing the gritty. "It's viral gold." The engineers looked at their shoes. The sales VP looked at the ceiling, praying for meteor. I looked at Braden, and I saw the end. He wasn't just stupid, he was dangerously arrogant. He began cutting non-essential departments. First, it was the QA team. "Why do we need testers?" he asked. "Shouldn't the code just work?" Then it was the client success team. "If they like the product, they'll stay. We don't need to hold their hands." I tried to voice concerns privately. I booked a 15-minute slot on his calendar, which was blocked out for 3 hours of executive meditation, and walked into his office. "Braden, you're cutting the legs off the table," I said, keeping my voice level. "Client success isn't hand-holding. It's retention. It's the reason we have a 98% renewal rate." He sighed, spinning a fidget spinner on his desk. "A fidget spinner. In 2024. Renee, you're bringing a lot of negative energy into the space. I need radiators, not drains. You're sounding very boomer right now." "I am 42. I'm sounding like a strategist who wants to make payroll," I snapped. "See? That's what I mean, fear-based thinking." He smiled, a condescending, cap-tooth grin. "Maybe you should take a half day. Go get a facial, you look tired." That was the moment the switch flipped. I didn't scream, I didn't flip the desk. I went cold, deep Arctic cold. I went back to my office, closed the door, and opened a new folder on my private drive. I named it the Titanic. I started documenting everything. Every insane email, every missed deadline, every client complaint that Tiffany ignored because she was too busy filming a day in the life vlog. I downloaded my slide decks, the ones I built, the ones I wrote every word of. I backed up my contact lists. I made PDF copies of every win, every metric, every thank you email from a CEO. I wasn't an employee anymore. I was a black box recorder waiting for the crash. The atmosphere in the office shifted. The veterans, ones who knew how the sausage was made, started avoiding eye contact with me. They knew I was on the chopping block. They could smell the ozone. Braden had begun copying Tiffany on my client emails, even the sensitive ones, just so she can learn from the master, he'd said in the email intro. 2 days later, I saw Tiffany replying to the CIO of a major banking client. She used the wrong acronym for their compliance standard. She signed off with cheers. "Tiff Zoxo?" The CIO didn't reply. I didn't correct her. I didn't jump in to save it. I took a screenshot, saved it to the Titanic, and took a sip of my coffee. It was getting bitter, but I was starting to enjoy the taste. The town hall meeting was mandatory. Of course it was. Braden loved an audience. We all shuffled into the main conference room, the air thick with the smell of stale bagels and impending doom. Braden stood at the front, wearing a headset microphone like he was giving a TED talk on the future of synergy. Behind him, a giant screen displayed a word cloud where vibe was the biggest word. "Team," he started, pacing the stage. "We are evolving. We are shedding the skin of the past. And honestly, the The past was heavy, it was slow, it was expensive. He looked directly at me. The whole room followed his gaze. I didn't flinch. I sat with my spine straight against the ergonomic mesh of my chair, a notebook open in front of me. I wasn't writing notes. I was drawing a complex geometric pattern that represented the crumbling of his empire. We have some legacy methods in this company, Braden continued, his voice dripping with faux concern. Methods that served us well in the dinosaur age. But we're mammals now. We're warm-blooded, and we need to phase out the cold-blooded logic that holds us back. Phase out? The phrase hung in the air like a guillotine blade. He clicked the clicker. A new slide appeared. It was the account renewal plan for Project Orion, our biggest, most difficult client, a defense contractor. These guys didn't do vibes, they did audits. I'm excited to announce, Braden beamed, that Tiffany will be leading the Orion pitch this year. Renee has been mentoring her, but it's time for fresh eyes. The room went silent. Could hear the hum of the HVAC system struggling to filter the stupidity out of the air. Everyone knew Orion. Orion ate junior analysts for breakfast and picked their teeth with the bones. Tiffany stood up, beaming. I'm so excited. I made a mood board for them, a mood board for a defense contractor. The pitch was scheduled for that afternoon via Zoom. I wasn't invited, but I had the login codes because I set up the recurring meeting 5 years ago. I sat in my office, headphones on, camera off, muted. Lurking, it was a massacre. The client, a 60-year-old ex-general named Colonel Sterling, sat stone-faced while Tiffany talked about brand alignment and holistic software journeys. She kept calling him Mr. Sterling. He had corrected her twice. It's Colonel. 10 minutes in, Sterling cut her off. Young lady, I don't give a damn about the journey. Want to know why the latency on the server clusters increased by 0.4% last month? And where is Renee? I don't sign contracts with children. Silence. Tiffany froze. She looked like a deer in headlights if the deer was also wearing excessive lip gloss. Braden, who was also on the call, panicked. Renee is transitioning to a strategic oversight role. We felt, get her on the line, Sterling barked, now, or I pull the contract. My phone rang. Was Braden? Renee, he hissed, panic cracking his voice. Hop on the Zoom, just smooth it over. Sterling is being difficult. I let it ring 3 times, then I picked up. I'm busy, Braden. I'm being phased out, remember? Just get on the damn call. I logged in. I turned on my camera. Sterling's face visibly relaxed when he saw me. Colonel, I said, my voice dropping an octave into professional calm. Apologies for the confusion. Latency issue is a cache clearing error on the secondary node. We have a patch ready to deploy tonight at 0200 hours. And regarding the renewal, I have the revised SLA prepared with the latency guarantees you asked for. I didn't have the SLA prepared. I made it up on the spot, but I knew what he needed to hear. Send it over, Renee, Sterling grunted, and stop wasting my time with the interns. He clicked off. I saved the company $2 million in 45 seconds. After the call, I expected a thank you. Maybe a holy shit, good job. Braden came to my office door. He didn't come inside. He leaned against the frame, arms crossed. You know, he said, you really undermined Tiffany's authority there. You made the team look weak. I stared at him. The sheer, unadulterated audacity took my breath away. I saved the contract, Braden. You showed off, he sneered. It's not about being right, Renee. It's about being a team player. If you can't support the new direction, maybe you shouldn't be steering the ship. He walked away. That was it. The humiliation wasn't that he tried to replace me. It was that he was too stupid to realize he couldn't. I closed my office door. I locked it. I pulled up my LinkedIn profile. I didn't change my status to open to work. That's desperate. Opened my personal email and composed a message to Marcus. Marcus was a shark. He was the VP of strategy at Apex Solutions, our biggest, nastiest competitor. We had fought over clients for a decade. He respected me because I was the only one who ever beat him. Subject, coffee, body. The weather is changing. Might be time for a new coat. I hit send. Then I opened the company handbook and turned to page 45, the non-compete clause. I read it. I read it again. And then a smile, a cold, sharp, razor blade smile spread across my face. The devil is in the details, but salvation is in the fine print. I spent the next 3 days being a ghost in my own office. I attended meetings. I nodded at the right times. I let Tiffany explain synergy to me without rolling my eyes. But underneath the surface, I was tunneling out of the prison. I sat with the company's employment contract. It was a template downloaded from the internet 10 years ago. Old man Miller was cheap when it came to lawyers. He believed in handshakes. Clause 14. B. Non-compete. Employee shall not solicit existing clients for a period of 12 months post-termination. Standard stuff. Scary if you don't know how to read. But then, Clause 14. C. The Rainmaker exception. Miller had added this years ago to attract high-level sales guys, unless said employee was the sole originator of the client relationship and has maintained primary contact for the duration of the contract, in which case the client is exempt from solicitation restrictions. Sole originator, primary contact. I looked at my client list. There were 22 major accounts. I had brought in 18 of them. I was the emergency contact for all of them. Braden, in his infinite wisdom, never bothered to update the contracts or formally assign himself to the accounts. He was too busy picking out bean-bag chairs for the break room. I was in the clear, but I needed to be bulletproof. I started cleaning my files. I went through years of emails and forwarded every instance of me landing a deal to my personal server. Every thanks, Renee, every Renee, let's do lunch. Every we're signing because of you. I built a digital dossier that proved I was the business. Then, lunch with Marcus. We met at a steakhouse 3 towns over, a dark, wood-paneled place where the waiters ignored you unless you were wearing a suit worth more than a car. Marcus was already there, swirling a glass of heavy red wine. Renee, he grinned, standing up. He looked like a wolf who just found out the sheep pen was left unlocked. I heard rumors. Is it true? Is the Prince of Darkness actually as dumb as they say? He's not the Prince of Darkness, Marcus, I said, sliding into the booth. He's the Prince of Pinterest, and yes, it's worse. I didn't give him the hard sell. I didn't beg for a job, I just laid out the facts. I manage $40 million in recurring annual revenue. The clients trust me. They hate him, he's trying to push me out. Marcus leaned in. And the non-compete, Clause 14. See, I said softly. Marcus laughed. It was a dry, barking sound. Miller's old Rainmaker clause. He never took that out, nope. Braden doesn't even know it exists. He thinks a contract is just something you sign so you can get the company iPad. Marcus stopped laughing. He looked at me with dead serious eyes. If you come to Apex, we don't just want you. We want the portfolio. Can you deliver? I don't have to deliver them, I said, cutting into my steak. They're going to come running. I just need a landing pad big enough to catch them. Double your base salary, Marcus said instantly. EP title, full autonomy, and a signing bonus that will pay off your mortgage. I want one more thing, I said. Name it. I want to run the acquisition strategy targeting my old firm. I want to be the one who twists the knife. Marcus raised his glass to the knife. We clinked glasses. The deal was done. Going back to the office the next day felt surreal. I was walking through a graveyard, but the ghosts were still typing on keyboards. Braden passed me in the hallway, was wearing noise-canceling headphones and singing along to something terrible. Hey, Renee, he shouted. Big budget meeting tomorrow. Bring your A game, we need to trim some fat. I'll be there, I said, smiling. I'm bringing the butcher knife. He gave me a thumbs up, oblivious. I went back to my desk and printed my resignation letter. I didn't date it. I just slipped it into my leather folio, right next to the printout of Clause 14. See, I was calm. Kind of calm you feel before a storm breaks. I checked my bank account. I checked my backup drive. I checked the time. Tick-tock, Braden. The conference room was freezing. Braden kept the AC on blast because he read somewhere that cold temperatures activate the hustler mindset. We were all shivering, me, the head of HR, the CFO, a beaten-down man named Gary who looked like he slept in his car, and Tiffany. Braden stood at the whiteboard, wielding a red marker like a weapon. He had drawn a pie chart that made no mathematical sense. Okay, team, he said, slapping the board. Here's the reality. Our burn rate is too high. We're spending too much on legacy infrastructure. He looked at me. Legacy infrastructure was code for people who know what they're doing. I've been looking at the salary bands, Braden continued. And frankly, they're lopsided. Have some people earning C-suite money for doing mid-level execution. I put my pen down. Braden, if you're referring to my compensation, it's tied to the revenue I generate. I bring in 10 times what you pay me. Do you, though? He turned, capping the marker with a loud click. Or does the brand bring it in? See, Renee, that's your problem. You think you're the star, but the company is the star. The vibe is the star. Tiffany nodded vigorously. Totally. It's about the ecosystem. Exactly, Tiff. And right now, Renee, your ecosystem is expensive. I could hire 3 Tiffany's for the price of 1 you. The room went dead silent. Gary, the CFO, looked like he wanted to crawl under the table and die. He knew the numbers. He knew that 3 Tiffany's equaled 0 revenue and 3 lawsuits. Is that a proposal? I asked, my voice dangerously soft. Braden sighed, a theatrical exhale of a burdened genius. Look, Renee, not saying you're fired, I'm saying we need to restructure your package. Base salary down 40%, commission capped. If you don't like it, well, maybe you've outgrown us. Maybe you're just too expensive for the modern world. There it was, the trigger. I looked at him. I looked at his stupid vest. I looked at Tiffany's smug, empty face. And I felt a weight lift off my chest that I hadn't realized I was carrying for 6 months. I stood up. Slowly. Think I'm expensive? I asked. I think you're overvalued, Braden smirked, and honestly, you should be grateful we're keeping you around. I reached into my folio. I pulled out the single sheet of paper I had printed the day before. I slid it across the mahogany table. It stopped perfectly in front of him. What's this? He asked, not looking at it. My resignation, effective immediately. Braden laughed. Wow, drama queen much. You can't just walk out, Renee. Have a notice period. You have a non-compete. Read the contract, Braden, I said, picking up my bag. The one your father wrote. I don't need to read it. I own it. Then you're about to learn a very expensive lesson in literacy. I took my badge off my lanyard. I placed it on the table. It made a solid clack sound that echoed in the silence. Where are you going? Tiffany asked, her voice squeaky. I'm going to find a buyer who can afford me, I said. Good luck with the vibes. Braden, you're going to need them. I turned and walked to the door. If you walk out that door, Braden yelled, his voice rising, don't think you can come crawling back when you realize nobody hires 40-year-old relics. I stopped. I didn't turn around. I just smiled. Goodbye, Braden. I walked out. I walked past the open plan desks. I walked past the espresso machine. I walked past the receptionist who looked at me with confusion, pushed through the glass front doors and stepped into the crisp Colorado air. The sun was shining. The mountains looked sharper than they had in years. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I dialed Marcus. He answered on the first ring. Did you do it? He asked. I'm out, I said. Initiate the offer. It's already in your inbox, Marcus said. Welcome to the winning team, Renee. I hung up. I took a deep breath of air that didn't smell like sandalwood and failure. I walked to my car, got in, and for the first time in 8 years, I turned the radio up loud. The next morning, I didn't wake up with a dread knot in my stomach. I woke up with a mission. I put on my best suit and Armani armor plating of charcoal gray and drove to Apex Solutions. Their building was directly across the street from my old office, literally directly across. I could see Braden's floor from the conference room window. Marcus met me in the lobby. No vibes, no hustler talk, just a firm handshake and a keycard. Your office is ready, he said, and the legal team has already reviewed your non-compete. You were right. The Rainmaker clause is ironclad. You're free to hunt. Let's not call it hunting, I said, walking into a corner office that smelled of leather and actual success. Let's call it a rescue mission. I sat down at my new desk. 2 4K monitors. A phone that worked. Team of 3 junior associates who looked at me like I was a general, not a nuisance. What's the play, Renee? Marcus asked, leaning against the doorframe. The play is honesty, I said. I'm going to call my clients. I'm going to tell them I left. I'm going to tell them where I am. And then I'm going to let Braden do the rest of the work for me. How so? Because right about now, I checked my watch. Clients are starting to call his office asking for me. Braden is going to lie. I was right. Back at the old firm, as I learned later from a mole in accounting, chaos had erupted. The colonel from the Orion project had called at 9:00 a.m. sharp. Get me Renee, he'd barked. Tiffany answered the phone. Oh, hi, Colonel. Renee is actually taking a sabbatical. She needed some me time. But don't worry, I'm taking over your account. Sabbatical? The colonel didn't buy it. She didn't tell me about a sabbatical. It was very sudden. Mental health is so important, right? Put the CEO on. Braden got on the line. Colonel, look, Renee was struggling with the workload. We decided to let her go for the good of the project. She wasn't agile enough for your needs. She wasn't agile. The colonel's voice was low. She was the only person in your clown car of a company who knew how our server architecture worked. We have Tiffany, Braden assured him. She has a mood board. The colonel hung up. 30 seconds later, my phone at Apex rang. It was the colonel, Renee. Good morning, Colonel Sterling, I said, putting him on speaker so Marcus could hear. How are the servers? To hell with the servers. Where are you? That idiot son of a bitch just told me you were fired for being slow. I resigned, Colonel. I'm now the VP of Strategy at Apex Solutions. Apex? He paused. They're expensive. We are, I agreed. But we don't hire people based on their TikTok following. We don't have latency issues. Can you take the account? I can, but you have a contract with Braden until December. I have a breach of contract clause, the colonel growled. Failure to provide adequate support. If you're not there, there's no support. Send me the paperwork, Renee. I'm moving the fleet. I looked at Marcus. He was grinning like a Cheshire cat. I'll have the transfer docs to you within the hour, Colonel. I hung up. That's one, Marcus said. $5 million. That's just the appetizer, I said, pulling up the contact info for the next CEO on my list. Now let's go for the main course. I spent the rest of the day on the phone. It was surgical. I didn't badmouth Braden. I didn't have to. I just said, I'm no longer there. Tiffany is handling your account now. The panic on the other end of the line was palpable. Tiffany, the girl who uses emojis in legal briefs, that's the one. Where are you? Can we follow you? I'd love to have you. By 5:00 p.m., I had 7 verbal commitments. That was roughly $12 million in revenue, migrating across the street in real time. I stood by the window and looked across at my old building. I could see Braden pacing in his office, waving his arms. He looked like a man trying to put out a forest fire with a water pistol. Burn, baby, burn, I whispered, taking a sip of my sparkling water. The next week was a bloodbath, a beautiful, bureaucratic bloodbath. The colonel was the first to officially pull the plug. His legal team sent a termination letter to Braden citing material breach of service level agreements. Braden tried to fight it. He sent Tiffany to the colonel's office with a basket of muffins and a "We're sorry" card. The colonel's security team escorted her off the premises. Then the dominoes started falling faster. Logistics giant #2 Global Freight called Braden. Heard Renee is at Apex. We're exercising our 60-day opt-out. Manufacturing giant #3 Steel Corps didn't even call. They just stopped paying invoices and sent a new vendor request form to Apex. My new office became a war room. We had whiteboard walls covered in client names. We were crossing them off one by one as they came over. My team at Apex was in awe. They had never seen a client migration like this. Usually, fight for scraps. I was bringing the whole buffet. Then I got the call I was dreading. Renee, it was Old Man Miller, the founder. I respected Miller. He was a hard man, but a fair one, until he went senile and gave his kingdom to the jester. Hello, Mr. Miller, I said, swiveling my chair to look at the mountains. What are you doing, Renee? His voice sounded old, tired. Braden tells me you're stealing the company. He says you're sabotaging him. I'm not stealing anything. He said firmly, I'm competing. Braden fired me, Miller, or he tried to. He told me I was too expensive. He what? He told me I was a legacy cost. He replaced me with a 24-year-old who thinks ROI is a type of yoga. The clients aren't leaving because I'm stealing them. They're leaving because they're terrified. There was a long silence on the line. He told me you quit, Miller said quietly. He said you had a breakdown. He lied. Like he lies about the metrics. Like he lies about the projections. I tried to warn you, Miller. I told you he wasn't ready. You gave him the keys anyway. He's my son, Renee. And that company was my life's work. I shot back. I built it. He's destroying it. I'm just salvaging the parts that work. If you take the Apex accounts, the company collapses. You know that. We're leveraged on those contracts. Maybe Braden should have thought about that before he tried to lowball the person who holds the relationships. Is there any way to stop this? Miller asked. If I come back, if I fire him, I paused. A part of me, the sentimental part, wanted to say yes. But then I looked at the "you're too expensive" scene in my head. I remembered the humiliation. I remembered Tiffany's mood board. It's too late, Miller, I said. The trust is gone. The clients have signed with Apex. Know I'm here. They know I'm valued here. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Miller sighed. It was the sound of a man watching his legacy dissolve. I see. Well, you always were a killer, Renee. I just forgot you were my killer. Goodbye, Miller. I hung up. I didn't feel guilty. I felt vindicated. An hour later, Braden called. He was screaming, "You witch, you traitor, I'm suing you. I'm suing Apex. I'm going to bury you in litigation so deep you'll need a submarine to get out." Hello, Braden, I said, putting him on speaker again. My legal counsel, a woman named Sarah who makes great white sharks look like goldfish, was sitting across from me. You're in violation of your non-compete. Braden shrieked. Clause 14. B, read Clause 14. See, Braden, I said calmly. There's no Clause 14. See, that's made up, page 8. Paragraph 3. Rainmaker exception. Your father wrote it. I qualified for it on 18 accounts. And guess which 18 accounts just left you? Silence. Frantic rustling of paper. Then a gasp. You planted this. I didn't plant it. I read it. Something you should try doing instead of meditating. I'll tell everyone you're a thief, go ahead, I said, but be careful. Defamation suits are very expensive, and unlike you, I can afford it. I hung up. Sarah the lawyer smiled. He's dead in the water. He has no case. I know, I said, but let's let him thrash a bit. It's good exercise. 2 weeks later, the old office was in freefall. It wasn't just the clients leaving, it was the talent. The engineers, realizing the money was drying up, started jumping ship. And where did they apply? Apex. I hired the best ones. I left the ones who had sided with Braden to rot. Braden tried one last desperate move. He sent an email blast to the remaining clients, mostly small Tier 3 accounts, claiming that Apex was under federal investigation for corporate espionage. It was a lie, obviously, and a stupid one. One of those clients forwarded the email to me. I walked it down the hall to Marcus. Is this actionable? I asked. Marcus, read it. Oh, this is beautiful. This is libel per se. We can send a cease and desist that will make his head spin. Do it, I said. Cease and desist letter hit Braden's desk the next morning. We demanded a public retraction and an apology, or we would sue for damages. Braden folded like a cheap lawn chair. He issued the retraction. It was the final nail in the coffin of his credibility. Then came the news about Tiffany. I was getting coffee in the Apex break room when one of my new hires, a bright kid named Josh who actually knew how to code, walked in. Hey, Renee, who just applied for the junior Discord moderator position. Discord moderator? Yeah, Tiffany, from across the street. I laughed. You're joking. Nope. Apparently Braden fired her yesterday. Blamed her for the Orion loss, said her vibes were off. Of course he did. Rats always eat each other when the ship goes down. Bring her in for an interview, I said. Really? No. But tell her we're reviewing her application. Let her sweat for a week. Then send her a rejection letter. Use Comic Sans. Petty? Yes. Satisfying? God, yes. The collapse of my old firm was now a spectator sport. We watched their stock price. They were privately held but had internal valuations tank. We heard rumors of missed payroll. We heard that Braden had sold the expensive espresso machine to pay the electric bill. The board of directors, Miller's old cronies, finally woke up from their naps. They called an emergency vote of no confidence. It was scheduled for Friday afternoon. I sat in my office looking at the Q3 projections for Apex. My portfolio was up 200%. My bonus was going to be obscene. I had already booked a vacation to the Amalfi Coast, an actual vacation, not a work trip. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Gary, the old CFO. Gary, they just voted. He's out. Miller is coming back as interim, but it's over, Renee. We have no cash flow. Filing for Chapter 11 next week. I stared at the screen. Bankruptcy. I felt a twinge of sadness, not for Braden, not for the company, but for the memory of what it used to be. It was a good shop once. We did good work, but then I remembered the "you're too expensive" line. I remembered the feeling of being discarded. I typed back, Gary, I'm sorry, Gary. Send me your resume, I need a controller. He replied instantly, sending now. I put the phone down. It saved the people who mattered. The rest was just ash. Friday evening. The sun was setting over the Rockies, painting the sky in bruises of purple and orange. I stood in the Apex boardroom, a glass of champagne in my hand. My team was behind me, 20 people, half of them refugees from across the street, celebrating the record-breaking quarter. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I looked across the street. The lights were off on Braden's floor, except for one office, corner office. I saw a figure moving around. It was Braden. He was packing a box. I watched him pick up his Hustle Harder neon sign. I watched him pick up his Newton's cradle. I watched him throw his vest over his shoulder. He stopped and looked out the window. He looked right at our building. I don't know if he could see me. The tint on our windows is pretty dark, but I stepped forward anyway. I raised my glass. Cheers, you absolute moron, I whispered. Turned off the light. The floor went dark. The company I had built for 8 years was gone. It was just a shell now, a cautionary tale about what happens when you confuse confidence with competence. Marcus walked up beside me. You okay? I'm better than okay, I said. I'm profitable. We just got the final numbers, Marcus said. With the acquisition of the Steel Core account, you have officially surpassed the total revenue of your old firm's peak year. Good, you know, Marcus mused, looking at the dark building across the street. He was right about one thing. What's that? You are expensive. I turned to him, smiling the smile of a woman who just won the war without getting a speck of blood on her silk blouse. Quality is always expensive, Marcus. It's the cheap knockoffs that cost you everything. I turned back to the party. The music was playing, not some vibe playlist, but classic rock. The team was laughing. The champagne was cold. I took a sip. It tasted like victory. Braden was gone. Tiffany was applying to be a Discord moderator, and I was the queen of the mountain. I pulled out my phone one last time. I opened the divorce Pinterest board equivalent, my folder titled The Titanic. I selected all files. I hit delete. I hit empty trash. We're all healed, I said to the empty screen. Then I went to join my team. We had work to do. After all, expensive assets have to justify their price tag. And I was just getting started.
Life doesn't always hand out clean endings, but sometimes it gives you exactly what you need. Thanks for listening. Until next time.